And this means, wu means none or not, no, negation. Wei has a combination of meanings. It can mean action, making, but the best translation I have found for it is forcing. And so Wu Wei is the principle of not forcing in anything that you do. Now we know when we watch any performance of an artist, be it a dancer or an actor or a musician, we know immediately when the performance is forced. And we say it doesn't ring true, it's too artificial, it doesn't seem to be natural. Many people who study the Taoist doctrines think that Wu Wei means do nothing, in the sense of laissez-faire, be lazy, always be passive. It doesn't mean that. There is a time for action. When you study judo, you use muscle only at the right moment. When your opponent is hopelessly overextended and off balance, and you add a little muscle to it and you throw him across the room. But only then. You never use muscle at the wrong moment. For as Shakespeare knew perfectly well, there is a tide in the affairs of men which, taken at its flood, leads on to fortune. And so Wu Wei is based on knowledge of the tide, the drift of things. Get with it. Wu Wei is the art of sailing rather than the art of rowing. So, if you say now, one of the most famous sayings in the Lao Tzu book is superior virtue has no intention to be virtuous, and thus is virtue. Inferior virtue cannot let go of virtuosity, and thus is not virtue. So one could also say, the real Wu Wei is not intentionally Wu Wei, and so is Wu Wei. But inferior Wu Wei so tries to be Wu Wei that it isn't. In other words, this is saying Wu Wei is not a matter of cultivated passivity or even of cultivated spontaneity, because there are people who think that they are released, that they have realized that they are the Tao, as all of us in fact are, or that you are, to put it into Vedanta terms, every one of us is the Brahman, the eternal self of the universe, beyond all description or classification or thought. And say, okay, baby, I'm that. Now I'm going to have a ball. Well, what kind of a ball do they have? Well, what they do is they look up the rules on which society runs and do the opposite. Well, that's still running by the rules of society. And it's the mirror image in reverse. That's not spontaneity. You have to be able to realize that you don't know what you really want to do until you are very quiet. And it tells you. So, to quote Jesus, unless you become again as a child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And if you read the Bible, incidentally, which is a very dangerous book, as I'm going to be demonstrating in Playboy this December, but understand heaven in a very literal sense, space. See, we are in heaven now because the earth is a spaceship and heaven is space. What is called in Chinese, Gong, Japanese gu, the void. That's what is important. That most of us don't know this. Even Shakespeare has one of his characters saying, "Oh, that this all too solid flesh would melt." But do you know you're much more space than you are anything else? If the ponderable, I won't say matter, the ponderable whatever in your bodies were condensed and all put together, it would be smaller than the point of a pin. And anyway, somebody once said, even a bishop is 80% water. We are airy nothings. So space is somehow very, very fundamental. We'll go into this in further way. But you understand that heaven is space. And all those references in those nursery rhymes that we learned as children, which were the hymns about heaven, always were talking about thrones and crowns and harps and streets of glass. Crystals, transparencies, space. It comes down to space always. Space, which nobody can define, nobody can imagine, appears to be nothing, is the foundation of the universe. But you have to become again as a child to see that. Now you know, go back to your childhood. What were the fascinating things? What's out there? What's beyond the stars? How long does it go on? And Mama said, it goes on always and always and always. The child wonders. He's excited. That this is something that never ends. Then the child asks about time. How long ago is long ago? Well, the Bible says that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Well, what did God do before he did that? Well, as one person said, he sat up thinking punishments in hell for people who ask silly questions. But still, that is only a joke. And the child thinks of God going back and back and back forever, with never beginning. So in the same way you think about death. Go to sleep and never wake up. Never. Whew. Why, it would be as if you never had existed. Not only you, but everything else. Which is, of course, the way things were before you were born. I mean, just turn it backwards. You know, how about waking up after having never gone to sleep? That's quite a thought. There's something fishy about it all. Ichthys, Jesus Christos Theou Ios here, the fish. So we get a funny feeling when we think those questions really through. Very funny feeling. And children, you see, love to get into that funny feeling. Children do all kinds of weird things. They like to spin around as fast as possible, so they watch suddenly the whole the ground goes tilting. They do this thing with their eyes, and they go, and they make faces and test out their bodies in all sorts of funny ways, because they know from the beginning that the world is weird. Strange thing. Because everybody knows what it's all about. Only they won't admit it. Being brought up is being taught not to admit it. Because you know very well what's going on. But in order to find out once more as an adult, you have to become again as a child. So what does that involve? It means, ladies and gentlemen, would you please check your ideas and opinions at the door? First of all your philosophical and religious views, all your logic, because I say check it at the door advisedly, because you can pick it up again when you go out if you feel unsafe without it. I'm not trying to argue you out of your opinions and views. I'm merely suggesting that for the sake of an experiment, you temporarily suspend them. And view what is as if you didn't even know how to talk. Red is not red, blue is not blue. Hard is not hard, soft is not soft. Male is not male, female is not female. There is just this jazz. It will not be possible to compel yourselves into this way of looking at things, because what Buddhists call habit energy is going on. And as I talk to you, you will find yourselves thinking in a compulsive and habitual way, this is red, this is green, this is something, this is nothing, this is solid, this is space. All right, but treat those thoughts that are going on in your head in exactly the same way as if they were... See? That's all they are. Like shapes in the spray as the sea breaks on the rocks. Now, please don't get agitated that this is an anti-intellectual point of view, that this is undermining the value of logic and reason and so on. Just we'll bring all that back later when we need it. But just for the time being, let's simplify. Close your eyes. Listen. What is? What do you really and truly, honestly, hear? Don't name it. Just as if it were music. Classic.
Your home is not merely a collection of walls and furniture. It is the space where you breathe without worry, where you can finally take off the mask you wear for the world. It is the one place where life should be allowed to flow naturally, like water finding its own level. And yet, how often do we invite into this sacred space people who disturb that flow, people who bring with them the weight of their anxieties, their judgments, their endless need to control and manipulate. There are certain types of people, you see, who carry with them a kind of psychic pollution, not because they are evil or malicious in some dramatic sense, but because they have not yet learned to let life be. They are still fighting with reality, still insisting that the universe should conform to their narrow expectations. And when such people enter your home, they bring that fight with them. They bring the tension, the resistance, the constant low-grade anxiety that makes peace impossible. Let me tell you about the first type, the chronic complainer. This is the person who walks through your door and immediately begins to catalogue everything that is wrong with the world. The weather is too hot or too cold. The traffic was unbearable. Their boss is an idiot. Their neighbor is inconsiderate. The government is corrupt. On and on it goes, an endless litany of grievances. Now you might think, this is simply someone having a bad day, venting their frustrations. But watch closely. This is not occasional venting. This is their natural state. They have made a lifestyle out of being bothered by life. They wake up in the morning looking for things to complain about. They go to bed at night rehearsing their complaints for tomorrow. What they have forgotten, or perhaps never learned, is that complaining about reality is like shaking your fist at the rain. The rain does not care. It is not against you, it is just rain. The chronic complainer treats life as a personal insult. Everything that does not match their preferences becomes evidence that the universe is somehow failing them. But here is what they do not see. Their complaints are not observations about the world. They are revelations about their own mind. They are showing you that they have not yet learned the art of acceptance, the ability to say yes to what is. And when you invite such a person into your home, they bring this poisonous perspective with them. Suddenly your comfortable chair is not quite right. Your coffee is too weak or too strong. Your choice of music is questionable. Nothing is ever quite good enough because they have trained themselves to focus exclusively on what is wrong rather than what is simply present. But here is the deeper problem. Complaining is contagious. It spreads like a virus. You begin the afternoon feeling peaceful, content with your simple life. The complainer arrives, and within an hour you too are noticing all the little imperfections, all the things that could be better, all the ways in which life is not measuring up to some imaginary standard. The peace you felt has evaporated, replaced by a vague sense of dissatisfaction. This is why you must keep the chronic complainer away from your home, not because you are cruel or uncaring, but because you understand that your home must be a sanctuary. It must be a place where you can practice acceptance, where you can let life be exactly as it is, without the constant commentary of judgment. The second type of person to keep away is the energy vampire. This is someone who enters your space and immediately begins to drain your vitality. They do not do this consciously or with malicious intent. They are not rubbing their hands together, thinking about how to steal your energy. No, it is far more subtle than that. The energy vampire is someone who has not learned to generate their own sense of well-being. They are constantly looking outside themselves for validation, for attention, for proof that they matter. And so they latch onto others like a drowning person clutching at a life preserver. You can recognize them by how you feel after they leave. You feel exhausted, depleted, as if you've been carrying a heavy weight, because in a sense, you have been. They have been unconsciously dumping their emotional burdens onto you, expecting you to carry what they refuse to carry themselves. They will monopolize the conversation, talking endlessly about their problems, their dramas, their latest crisis. But notice something, they do not actually want solutions. If you offer practical advice, they will immediately explain why it will not work. If you suggest a new perspective, they will cling even more tightly to their victim story. This is because their real need is not for help. Their real need is for attention. They have discovered that the being in crisis, being troubled, being overwhelmed gives them a steady supply of concern from others, makes them feel important, needed, central to someone's attention. And so they perpetuate their own suffering because it has become their currency. When such a person sits in your home, they suck all the oxygen out of the room. Everything becomes about them, their feelings, their needs, their endless internal drama. You cannot relax because you are constantly being pulled into their emotional whirlpool. You cannot simply be because they are demanding that you do something, fix something, validate something. And the tragedy is that no matter how much you give, it is never enough. Because the hole they are trying to fill cannot be filled from the outside. It can only be filled when they finally turn inward and discover their own completeness. But until that happens, they will continue to drain everyone around them, leaving behind a trail of exhausted and frustrated people. Your home cannot be a place of peace if it becomes a dumping ground for other people's unprocessed emotions. This is not selfishness. This is basic self-preservation. You cannot help anyone if you are yourself depleted. You cannot offer genuine compassion if you are resentful of being used. The third type is the person who treats your home as a stage for their performance. This is someone who cannot simply be present. They must always be performing, always proving something, always seeking applause. They walk through your door and immediately begin to tell you about their latest achievement, their recent purchase, their impressive connection with someone important. Every conversation becomes an opportunity for them to showcase how successful, how clever, how special they are. They are like peacocks spreading their feathers, except peacocks have the excuse of genuine beauty. This person has confused their role in life with their actual identity. They think they are their accomplishments, their possessions, their social status. They have built an elaborate costume, and now they must constantly maintain it, constantly remind everyone of how impressive it is. The exhaustion of this is palpable. What they do not understand is that true presence requires no performance. A flower does not try to be beautiful. It simply opens, and its beauty is evident. A child does not rehearse being playful. The playfulness flows naturally from their being. But this person has forgotten how to simply be. They have become so identified with their act that they no longer know who they are without it. And when they enter your home, they turn your living room into their theater. They need an audience, and you become that audience whether you wish to or not. You cannot have a genuine conversation because they are not really listening. They are waiting for their next cue, their next opportunities, to bring the spotlight back to themselves. This creates a peculiar kind of loneliness. You are sitting with someone, sharing space with them, and yet there is no real meeting. Because they are not actually there, they are too busy managing their performance to be present to what is actually happening. You might as well be talking to a well-rehearsed recording. Your home should be a place where masks can come off, where people can stop performing and simply exist. But the performer cannot do this. They are terrified of being seen without their costume because they believe the costume is all they are. And so your home becomes just another venue for their exhausting show. Keep them away, not with anger or judgment, but with the simple recognition that you need space where authenticity is possible. You need a place where people can be ordinary, where the pressure to impress is released, where genuine human connection can occur. The fourth type is the person who lives in constant comparison. They walk into your home and immediately begin measuring. Is your home bigger than theirs? Is your furniture nicer? Do you have something they do not have? And equally, do they have things you lack? Their mind is like an accountant's ledger, constantly tallying who is winning and who is losing in the game of life. But here is what they have not realized. Nobody is keeping score except them. Life is not a competition, it is a dance. And you cannot dance if you are too busy checking whether you are dancing better than everyone else. This person cannot simply enjoy what is present because they are always comparing it to something else. They cannot appreciate your hospitality because they are mentally comparing it to other people's hospitality. They cannot relax in your company because they are too busy evaluating whether you are more successful than them or less successful, richer or poorer, happier or sadder. This makes genuine friendship impossible because friendship requires a basic equality, a recognition that we are all human beings, stumbling through existence together. But the compara has divided the world into winners and losers, the superior and the inferior, and they are constantly anxious about which category they fall into. When they sit in your home, you can feel their assessment happening. They are not really seeing you. They are seeing how you measure up to their internal standards. They are not appreciating your home. They are comparing it to some ideal in their mind or to other homes they have visited. Nothing is experienced directly. Everything is filtered through this exhausting process of comparison. And this attitude is infectious. Before long, you find yourself comparing too. You start to see your own home through their judgmental eyes. That comfortable chair you loved suddenly seems shabby. That painting you enjoyed now seems amateurish. The contentment you felt has been replaced by a vague sense of inadequacy. This is the poison of comparison. It takes what is simple and good and turns it into a source of anxiety. It takes what is enough and makes it seem lacking. It steals the present moment and replaces it with an endless measurement against imaginary standards. Your home must be protected from this energy. The fifth and perhaps most dangerous type is the person who brings drama wherever they go. Their life is an endless soap opera, and they need you to play a supporting role. There is always a crisis, always a conflict, always an emergency that requires immediate attention. They thrive on chaos because chaos makes them feel alive. Ordinary peaceful existence feels flat to them, boring. And so they unconsciously create turmoil. They pick fights, they stir up trouble, they turn molehills into mountains. And then they draw everyone around them into their manufactured drama. These people have not learned that peace is not the absence of stimulation. It is the presence of harmony. They think that excitement requires conflict, that intensity requires crisis. They have confused the adrenaline rush of drama with actual vitality. When such a person enters your home, suddenly small things become large. They amplify everything, turning the volume up on life until the noise becomes unbearable. And here is their trick. They make you feel responsible for their drama. If you do not react strongly enough, you are unsupportive. If you suggest they are overreacting, you are uninvalidating their feelings. They have learned to use emotional manipulation to keep everyone engaged with their chaos. But watch what happens if you refuse to participate. If you remain calm, if you do not feed the drama with your reaction, they become frustrated. Because they need your participation. They need your shock, your concern, your agitation to fuel their performance. Without it, the drama deflates. Your home cannot be a theater for other people's chaos. It must be a refuge from the noise of the world, not an amplifier of it. It must be a place where calm can exist, where simple moments can unfold without being interrupted by manufactured crisis. So these are the 5 types. The chronic complainer who cannot accept what is, the energy vampire who drains your vitality, the performer who cannot stop the show, the comparer who cannot simply appreciate, and the drama creator who cannot live in peace. Now, I am not suggesting you become cold or unkind. I am not saying you should judge these people harshly or treat them with contempt. Remember, they too are struggling. They too are caught in their own patterns, their own unconscious habits. They are doing the best they know how with the understanding they have. But understanding their struggle does not mean you must sacrifice your own peace. Compassion does not require you to be a doormat. You can care about someone while also recognizing that their presence in your space is harmful to your well-being. Think of it this way. If someone had a contagious illness, you would not invite them into your home. Not because you hate them, but because you understand that protecting your health is necessary. The patterns I have described are also contagious, but they infect your psychological and spiritual health rather than your physical body. Your home is your temple, your sanctuary, the space where you can finally stop fighting and simply be. It must be protected, not with walls and locks, but with wisdom and discernment. You must learn to recognize what energies nourish life and what energies deplete it. This does not mean your home becomes a fortress of isolation. It means it becomes a garden, carefully tended, where only life-giving elements are invited in. A place where genuine connection can happen, where laughter is real rather than nervous, where silence is comfortable rather than awkward. where people can take off their masks, because the pressure to perform has been lifted. When you keep these 5 types away from your home, something wonderful happens. The space begins to clear, like muddy water settling when left alone. The constant noise quiets. The tension releases. And in that clearing, you rediscover what it means to simply live. You find yourself breathing more deeply. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw untenches. The constant vigilance relaxes, because you are no longer having to manage other people's dysfunction. You are free to just be, to drink your tea, to watch the light change, to hear the birds, to exist without commentary or drama or performance. And here is the beautiful part. When your home becomes this kind of sanctuary, you become more available for genuine connection, because you are no longer depleted by toxic interactions. You have more energy for real friendship. Because you are no longer surrounded by complainers, you can appreciate the people who show up with gratitude. Because you are no longer hosting performers, you can welcome those who are comfortable being ordinary. Your home becomes a place that reflects your values, your priorities, your understanding of what life is really about. It becomes a living statement that says, I choose peace over drama, presence over performance, acceptance over complaint, generosity over energy vampirism, appreciation over comparison. This is not about being perfect or having the ideal home. It is about recognizing that the energy you allow into your space matters. It shapes your consciousness. It affects your peace. It determines whether your home is a place of restoration.
There's a strange thing that happens to many who step onto what they call the spiritual path. It begins, as all searches do, with a feeling that something is missing, a quiet ache that ordinary life can no longer satisfy. You sense there's something deeper beneath the noise, something vast and wordless that you've somehow forgotten. So, quite innocently, you begin to look, you read books, you listen to teachers, you meditate, chant, fast, and strive. You chase stillness as though it were a prize waiting at the top of a long staircase. And you tell yourself, once I find it, I'll finally be free. But what you don't realize yet is that the very one who's seeking that freedom is the same one who feels trapped. It's like a man trying to run away from his own shadow. The faster he runs, the more it follows. That is the first trap, you see, the trap of seeking. For most people, the search begins as a reaction to discomfort. You feel restless, lost, unsatisfied, and you imagine that if only you could wake up, life would stop hurting. So you turn the search for peace into another form of struggle, a more elegant kind of ambition. You no longer chase success or status. Now you chase enlightenment. But the movement is the same. The seeker and the businessman, the ascetic and the addict, both are running from the same unease. And so long as you keep seeking, you confirm the very absence you're trying to escape. You say, I am not yet whole. I must find something to complete me. But wholeness was never something to find. It was the silence that was looking. The irony, of course, is that you don't stop seeking because you fail. You stop because you finally exhaust yourself. You grow tired of chasing experiences, tired of comparing your peace to someone else's. And in that moment of giving up, the strangest thing happens. You notice that stillness was here all along. When the searching stops, awareness begins. And yet, even that realization, profound as it may be, carries its own subtle danger. Because now you begin to think, I understand, I've seen through the illusion, and you quietly start to build a new identity around it. You become the one who knows. This is the second trap, the trap of identity. You see, the ego is not destroyed by awakening. It merely changes shape. Before, it was the self that wanted wealth, pleasure, and importance. Now, it becomes the self that wants purity, stillness, and enlightenment. The same actor, just in new costume. You start saying things like, I'm learning to detach, or I no longer let things affect me. But listen closely to the tone behind those words. There's still a subtle I, a center that takes pride in its calmness. You might even begin to feel quietly superior, as though the rest of the world was still asleep while you've seen the truth. But that, too, is just another dream. The awakened ego is more dangerous than the materialistic one, because it hides its pride behind the mask of humility. You start performing spirituality, mistaking the gestures for the essence. You meditate not to be still, but to appear still. You speak softly, not out of peace, but out of control. You post quotes about detachment, all while desperately wanting to be seen as someone who has let go. And so you've traded one identity for another. You've escaped the prison of the world only to build a more beautiful cage in its place. But the soul, you see, cannot breathe in a cage, not even a golden one. True freedom doesn't arrive when you've perfected yourself. It arrives when you no longer need to. It's when you can laugh at your own seriousness, when you can say, there I go again, trying to be enlightened. Because the real awakening isn't about becoming special, it's about becoming ordinary again, without shame. Most people don't realize how exhausting the spiritual performance is. Always being aware, always monitoring your thoughts, always maintaining that serene mask. It's tiring to pretend to be peaceful all the time. And life, being infinitely patient, eventually exposes the act. One day, you lose your temper, or you cry, or you feel jealous, and suddenly you think you've failed, but you haven't failed at all. You've just become real again. When you stop trying to be the enlightened version of yourself, awareness becomes effortless, because awareness was never something you could lose. It's not a possession, it's your nature. The great mistake is thinking awakening is about improvement. It's not. It's about recognition. The difference is subtle but profound. Improvement says, I'll work on myself until I am pure. Recognition says, I see that even in my imperfection I am whole. When that recognition dawns, even your flaws begin to look sacred. And this brings us, quite naturally, to the third trap, the trap of goodness. It's easy to see why this one seduces so many. After all, what could possibly be wrong with trying to be good? You try to be kind, compassionate, understanding, and for a while, it feels right. But eventually you notice a tension behind your virtue, a quiet strain, as though you're forcing something unnatural. You smile when you don't mean it. You forgive when you still feel the sting. You tell yourself a good person wouldn't be angry, so you repress your anger and call that forgiveness. But the truth is, real goodness doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't come from discipline. It flows from understanding. When you truly see how interconnected all things are, kindness becomes spontaneous. You don't try to be kind. You can't help it. When you're genuinely at peace, goodness happens by itself like a flower blooming in the sun. Trying to be good, on the other hand, is often just spiritual pride in disguise. You want to see yourself as virtuous, or you want others to see you that way. But the moment you say, I'm a good person, you've already missed it. Because the moment you identify with goodness, you also create its opposite, those who are not. And so judgment quietly returns, now painted in moral colors. Real compassion, you see, doesn't divide. It doesn't say, you are asleep and I am awake. It doesn't say, I forgive you because I'm above you. It simply sees, and in that seeing, there is understanding. To be truly good, you must forget about being good. The universe doesn't moralize. It simply moves, birth and death, pleasure and pain, all part of one motion. And to awaken is to join that motion without resistance. You might still feel anger, sadness, or desire, but you no longer cling to them. You let them arise and fall like waves, without judging the tide. And slowly, you realize that goodness isn't a destination. It's what remains when you stop pretending to be better than you are. That's the hidden beauty of awakening. It strips away every identity you thought you needed, the seeker, the saint, the savior, until only life itself remains, raw and unfiltered. After all this striving to be good, after all the effort to be still, to be aware, to be pure, a quiet fatigue begins to set in. You start to wonder why, after all these meditations, affirmations, and insights, the peace never seems to stay. You've had glimpses, moments of clarity, even bliss, but they vanish as quickly as they come. And so, once again, you begin to measure. You think, maybe I'm making progress, but slowly. This is the fourth trap, the trap of progress. You see, the modern mind is trained to think in lines and ladders. Everything must be a journey upward, from ignorance to knowledge, from chaos to order, from darkness to light. But awareness doesn't move like that. It doesn't travel. It reveals. You are not climbing toward awakening, you are awakening to what has never moved. But we love the idea of progress. We like to think there's a point somewhere ahead where we'll finally arrive. So we create stages: beginner, intermediate, advanced. We measure our calmness, our mindfulness, our ability to stay present. We grade ourselves spiritually the same way we once graded ourselves in school. But can you see the irony? You've turned the infinite into a curriculum. You've taken something as boundless as consciousness and squeezed it into a chart of self-improvement. Progress assumes time, and awakening is the end of time. It's the collapse of the idea that you are on your way anywhere at all. When you truly understand that, progress loses its meaning, because in this very moment, not a future one, you are already complete. There's nothing to add, nothing to remove. Only the illusion of movement remains, yet the illusion is necessary for a while. It's part of the play. You can't rush the unlearning of effort. Even when you see through the traps, the habits remain the habit to measure, to compare, to check your level. So, what do? You simply notice it happening, and you laugh. That laughter is freedom. You stop treating awakening as an exam and start seeing it as a dance, a rhythm between remembering and forgetting. There will be days of clarity and days of confusion, moments of light and moments of darkness. But the one who sees both is untouched by either. Awakening is not about sustaining one state forever. It's about realizing that you are not the states. When you stop grading your awareness, peace sneaks up on you. It comes not because you earned it, but because you stopped resisting the way things are. And that's when the final illusion often arrives, the one most subtle and seductive of all. It's what I call the trap of escape. After seeing through the other traps, the seeking, the ego, the moral striving, the measuring, a new desire arises, the desire to transcend. You want to be done with it, all the messiness, the emotions, the pain of being human. You want to rise above it, to live only in serenity. But that desire, too, is born from resistance. It is the ego's last disguise, the one who has renounced. You might find yourself thinking, I'm no longer interested in worldly things. You avoid conflict, withdraw from people, stop engaging with the pulse of life. You call this detachment, but it's not detachment, it's avoidance. You haven't transcended the world, you've simply hidden from it. And life, with infinite compassion, won't let you stay there for long. It will send you something, a heartbreak, a loss, a sudden beauty that pulls you back into the human experience. Because you're not meant to escape the world, you're meant to embody it consciously. The ocean doesn't reject its waves, it becomes them. Enlightenment isn't floating above life, it's sinking so deeply into it that you realize there was never a separation to begin with. To awaken is to fall in love with the ordinary. To look at a cup of tea, a tired face, a passing cloud, and feel the whole universe moving there. It's to understand that your search for the divine was always a misunderstanding, because there's nothing in existence that isn't divine. The sacred was never elsewhere. It was here, hidden behind the eyes that were looking. So long as you believe enlightenment will take you out of the world, you will keep missing the holiness of being in it. The truth, you see, is far simpler. You are not here to escape the dream. You are here to wake up within it. And perhaps that's the real purpose of these traps, not to imprison you forever, but to teach you how easily you build your own walls. Every trap is also a mirror. Every illusion, a teacher in disguise. You don't need to destroy them. You only need to see them for what they are. Because the moment you recognize a trap, it loses its power. The moment you stop struggling to escape it, you're already free. Freedom isn't somewhere outside the maze. It's the realization that the walls were never real. When you truly understand that, there's nothing left to chase, nothing left to prove. Even the idea of spirituality begins to dissolve. You stop being a seeker or a knower or a teacher. You become simply alive. And in that aliveness, you notice something profound. Everything is exactly as it should be. The people still chasing, the ones pretending, the ones judging, they're all playing their parts perfectly, just as you once did. So you stop correcting them. You stop trying to wake anyone up. You just live quietly, freely, and deeply awake to the simple fact of being. That is where all paths lead, though none can take you there. Not by effort, not by method, but by the soft collapse of everything you thought you needed to do. And when that collapse finally happens, when all the striving and seeking fade, something breathtaking appears in their place. Not a grand enlightenment, not a cosmic explosion of understanding, but something humble, intimate, familiar, life. Just this, the sound of your breath, the warmth of sunlight on skin, the quiet laughter of knowing that you never had to try so hard. That's when you realize the greatest truth of all. You were never spiritually stuck. You were only pretending to be trapped so you could one day discover the joy of being free. When you've spent long enough searching for freedom, a curious thing begins to happen. You stop believing in escape. The word freedom itself begins to dissolve, because you start to see that it always implied a cage. And when the idea of a cage fades, what's left? Only openness, only life. But this doesn't feel like a sudden revelation. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or angels or cosmic fireworks. It comes quietly, like a sigh at the end of a long day, a deep exhale into what has always been here. You find yourself smiling at your own seriousness. You remember how hard you tried to meditate correctly, how you measured your breathing, your posture, your progress. You remember how you used to feel proud when you felt detached, and guilty when you felt desire. And you can't help but laugh, not mockingly, but tenderly, because you see that all of it, every attempt, every failure, every contradiction, was part of the unfolding. That laughter, that gentle self-forgiveness, is the beginning of true understanding. You realize that life never demanded perfection from you. It only asked that you live it. You were never supposed to master existence, only to experience it. And once you see that, everything relaxes. The war with yourself ends. You stop trying to control your mind, and it quiets on its own. You stop trying to force peace, and peace begins to bloom like a wildflower in the cracks of your effort. You stop pretending to be enlightened, and suddenly, even your confusion feels sacred, because you finally see you were never outside the flow, not even for a moment. The river of being carries everything, your clarity, your doubt, your laughter, your tears. Nothing is out of place. This is what I mean by letting the traps fall away. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to dismantle them one by one. You simply stop identifying with the one who was trapped. It's like waking up from a dream in which you were drowning. The moment you open your eyes, you realize there was never any water. And yet, That dream taught you something about fear, about grasping, about surrender. So you don't regret it. You just smile, stretch, and move on with your day. That's what the journey is. A long, beautiful dream of forgetting and remembering. Once the illusions fall away, something wonderful begins to happen. Not mystical or dramatic, but wonderfully simple. Ordinary moments start to shimmer again. You notice the way sunlight moves through the trees, the sound of wind brushing against leaves, the rhythm of footsteps on pavement. You begin to see how much beauty there is in things that ask for nothing, the scent of rain, a stray cat crossing the road, the quiet hum of the world going on without your interference. You start to live without trying to be aware, because awareness has become effortless. And this, you realize, is what awakening was always pointing to. Not an achievement, not a transformation, but a homecoming. You were never meant to transcend being human. You were meant to remember how divine it already is. That's the ultimate irony. You searched for transcendence only to find that what you were trying to escape was sacred all along. When you stop rejecting life, even your imperfections begin to glow. The same anger that once felt like failure now feels like energy moving through you. The sadness that once seemed unbearable now feels like depth. The emptiness that frightened you becomes a vast sky where everything can appear and disappear freely. You no longer cling to emotions as proof of identity. You no longer resist them as signs of weakness. You simply allow them, like weather passing through the open sky of awareness. And when you do that, when you truly stop judging what arises, you notice that every emotion, no matter how painful, carries a hidden tenderness. Each feeling is life reaching out, saying, "Look, you are still alive. You still feel." It's all part of the same pulse. You begin to realize that the point of spirituality was never to rise above emotion, but to become intimate with it, to hold joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion, all in the same vast embrace. That is the art of letting go. Not throwing things away, but holding them so lightly that they can dance. Now, there's something subtle that happens when you live like this. You stop taking ownership of the movement of life. You stop thinking, "I am doing this," or "I am becoming that." Instead, there's simply doing, simply being. The river moves, and you are the river. The wind blows, and you are the wind. You don't stand apart from life anymore. You are its expression. And because there's no longer a you trying to hold life together, life begins to unfold naturally, without conflict, without resistance. Things fall away when they're ready. People leave when they must. Joy comes, sorrow follows, then joy again. But now, none of it threatens you, because you no longer cling to permanence. You see that impermanence isn't the enemy of peace, it's the reason peace exists. There's a certain peace that comes not from answers, but from finally giving up the need for them. You stop demanding explanations from existence. You stop arguing with the mystery. And the mystery, for the first time, starts to feel like home. You no longer need to understand why things happen the way they do. You trust that they unfold according to a rhythm too vast for the mind to measure. That trust, that quiet faith in life, is what freedom truly is. Freedom isn't the ability to choose every path. It's the ease of walking whichever one appears before you. And in that freedom, you rediscover innocence. You begin to laugh again, not because life is easy, but because you finally stopped expecting it to be anything else. You see that your search was never for enlightenment, it was for simplicity. To be able to wake up in the morning, breathe, and know that this is enough. To eat when you're hungry, to rest when you're tired, to love without strategy, to lose without resentment, to die without regret. That is awakening in its purest form, not fireworks, not transcendence, but ease. If there is a final lesson, it's this: nothing you let go of is ever truly lost. The illusions fall away, but the truth they disguised remains.
The masks crumble, but the face beneath them has always been smiling. The traps dissolve, and you realize they were never meant to imprison you, only to teach you how not to hold on. And once you've learned that, there's nowhere left to go, and nothing left to become. There is only this, the eternal now, breathing through you. You can still meditate, still read, still teach, or pray, but not out of need. You do them as the ocean makes waves, not because it must, but because it can. The wise man still chops wood and carries water, but now he knows the one chopping, the one watching, and the one being chopped are not three, they are one. Life was never asking you to awaken. It was awakening through you, in its own time, in its own way. And perhaps, in the end, that's the only realization there is. You were never spiritually stuck. You were just unfolding. And in the moment you stop trying to move forward, you discover you were never behind. You were home all along.
You see, living merely to await a brilliant tomorrow is the most refined way to steal one's own life. Imagine you're walking up an endless staircase. In Latin, gradius means step, and we call the years of schooling grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, then graduation, gradus, gradus, gradus. You climb and climb, as if each step were a promise of something greater. Finally, when you stand at the very top, perhaps as the chairman of a massive corporation, you suddenly feel a strange emptiness. You've conquered everything, but now what? There are no more steps to climb, and since you were never taught how to pause, to breathe, to feel this moment, you become lost in your own victory. Our education system, with all its seriousness and structure, never guides you on how to exist right in the breath of the present. It only trains you to postpone joy, to push everything into a vague future. Then one day, when you're exhausted from all those gradus, an insurance agent knocks on the door and whispers, "I have the perfect thing for you, a retirement plan. Just be patient until you're 65, when you leave the work grind, and you'll truly live, truly enjoy." Enjoy what? Exactly. With prostate pains, hormonal changes, dentures, and all the annoyances of old age. That's an empty promise, a way to extend the deferral of life. The art of living in the eternal moment, what people call now, is never taught in classrooms. Why? Because it's seen as irresponsible, lazy, lacking ambition. But listen, enjoying life isn't a luxury. It's the most basic human duty. If you don't learn how to do it, you'll become a burden to yourself and the world around you. You'll grow aggressive, seek to seize, manipulate others, turn into a power-mad tyrant, all because you haven't grasped the simple, cheap secret of being fully present in this second. In truth, sustaining a human life doesn't require that much energy. Think about it. How much food is enough? What do you wear to cover and warm yourself? How much space do you need to dwell? It all boils down to needs so basic, they're almost simplistic. And that simplicity opens the door to savoring the most refined things. Watching a raindrop slide down the window pane, feeling how it curves, how light refracts, how it merges with the world outside. That's a free performance, a masterpiece of the universe. But if you tell someone you're entranced by it, they'll shake their head. Are you crazy? Why not do something more important? More important here means what? It means causing disruption, intervening, progressing. We're indoctrinated with the idea that a person's value lies in changing the world, in pushing everything forward. We confuse natural growth, like trees growing, with progress as defined by humans. Without a grand project, without bustling activity, without future goals, you're labeled lazy, useless. But those who don't chase the future say, you're the crazy ones. You work to accumulate for a tomorrow that never comes, while we live fully today. Look at how a traditional Chinese person works. He labors just enough to have money, then stops, goes to a tea house, gambles a bit, smokes a pipe, or simply wanders admiring the scenery. We call that irresponsible, not maintaining the world properly. But perhaps that way of living is the true maintenance. Perhaps we, with our Protestant work ethic of ceaseless labor, with the belief that everything must be controlled, must progress, are the ones destroying the planet. We eradicate diseases, extend lifespans, but end up creating nuclear bombs to wipe it all out. That's the logical outcome of living for the future, promising forever, and when there's nothing left to promise, only destruction remains. Peoples untouched by the whirlpool of politics, Native American tribes, indigenous Mexicans, Africans, don't understand us, and we don't understand them, because they have no desire for what we call an ideal society. A few were convinced, like in Japan. They plunged into Western-style industrialization, and now cities like Nara, Osaka, Kobe are choked in smog, Tokyo a chaotic nightmare. They're reaping the consequences of chasing the illusion of the future. In the Hindu worldview, time is a cycle called yuga, starting from a golden age, then gradually declining, everything just unraveling over the ages. That's a reminder, escape the wheel of time, escape that rat race. This very idea underlies the political philosophy of redirection that I propose. Lead Western people out of history, out of the belief that we're in a process leading to something better forever. In reality, that process only leads to ever greater destruction. Live a timeless way of life, indefinite, far more appealing than a life devoted to time. Technology isn't the enemy. It brings the power to completely eliminate poverty. But if we view technology through the lens of history, as part of unending progress, it will fail. The distribution problem of wealth from technology isn't material, it's psychological. People are hypnotized by money, seeing it as having intrinsic value instead of just a symbol. Imagine a cosmic joke. Money, which we worship like a god, is really just numbers dancing in ledgers. Ramakrishna once said gold is one of humanity's great calamities, not because the metal shines, but because we mistake the symbol for reality. There's a funny story I like to retell. Long ago, banks around the world got tired of shipping physical gold across oceans, so they set up a central island in the Pacific. All the gold was gathered there, in a massive vault. For exchanges, they just pushed carts of gold down a short street between branches. Everything ran smoothly for a decade. Then one day, the bank owners brought their wives and kids to visit the island. Threw a grand party. They checked the books. Perfect. Finally, the kids clamored, "Dad, show us the gold." The vault managers started stammering, sweating. It's a bit difficult. It needs some preparation. The bank owner barked, "Nonsense. Show the kids the gold now." Finally, the truth came out. 7 years earlier, a submarine earthquake had swallowed the entire vault. But don't worry, they still recorded exactly how much gold each side owned in the books. So the gold was gone, but the value remained. On paper, we laugh uproariously, but that's exactly how the world works today. Money isn't gold, isn't resources, isn't real wealth, just promises, signs, collective magic. The US dollar prints. The United States government promises to pay $1. Pay with what? Another piece of paper. Money is debt, credit, packaged faith. The problem isn't lack of food, housing, clothing, technology produces in surplus. The problem is we're hypnotized by numbers on bank screens. We burn food in America while children starve in India, not because of shortage, but because the books don't balance. That's a refined form of madness. We can feed the whole planet, but let millions starve just for a symbol. The solution sounds equally mad. Reverse taxation. Instead of collecting from people, issue credit, but credit tied to actual total output, not phantom gold or empty promises. Then everyone can exchange what they create without monetary barriers blocking them. This isn't an economic issue. It's psychological. We're trapped in the illusion called Maya in Indian philosophy, the veil over reality. The future is part of that veil. We live as if tomorrow is when life really begins. Imagine you're a donkey with a fishing pole around your neck, a carrot dangling at the end right in front of your nose. You walk and walk, the carrot always there, always in reach, but never touched. That's the perfect image of modern man. We chase the future, chase retirement, chase when I'm rich then, when I retire then, when the kids are grown then, and when you finally bite the carrot, achieve the goal, you realize it's just a plastic fake, or worse, it's long withered. Classical Eastern people don't fall into this trap. They work just enough to live, then stop. They don't see work as life's purpose, but as a means. A Japanese blacksmith might spend the morning forging a blade, then the afternoon sitting watching cherry blossoms fall. We call that laziness. They call it living. When you're not obsessed with the future, You don't need infinite accumulation. You don't need a big house, fancy car, overflowing closet, because you don't use them to fill an inner void. That void can only be filled by presence, hearing leaves rustle, feeling the warmth of a teacup in your hand, smelling earth after rain. But our society is built on fear of scarcity. We're taught that if we don't accumulate, don't prepare, don't progress, we'll fall into misery. So we run forever, like hamsters on a wheel. And the wheel spins so fast we don't realize we're standing still. Technology advances, the wheel spins faster. We have washing machines, dishwashers, cars, planes, all to save time. Save time for what? To work more, earn more, buy more time savers. The perfect circle of meaninglessness. Meanwhile, a farmer in Bali might spend the day sitting under a coconut tree, watching waves crash. He has no insurance, no retirement fund, no 5-year plan. But he has what we've lost, peace in this moment. He doesn't wait for tomorrow to live, because he knows tomorrow is just a notion. Today is all he has, and today is enough. We need a revolution not in politics, not in economics, but in perception. Redirect people away from history, away from the story that we're progressing toward a future paradise. History is a linear tale, from primitive to civilized, from poverty to prosperity, from war to peace. But reality isn't linear. Reality is cyclical. Birth, dwelling, change, extinction. Every empire collapses. Every technology obsolesces. Every future promise vanishes. Only this moment is real. Technology can be a tool for liberation, if used right. Imagine, machines do all heavy work, automate food production, energy, housing. People don't need to work 8 hours a day. We could work 2 hours, or nothing at all, and still have enough. But for that to happen, we must abandon the illusion of money as a measure of value. We must abandon the belief that hard work is moral. We must learn to live without future goals. Now let's step together into an imaginary garden. Not a manicured Versailles type, but a wild garden where grass grows haphazardly, flowers bloom by season, and no one bothers to prune. Here, time isn't the enemy, it's a companion. A butterfly lands on a petal. You stop to watch, not to record or photograph, but just because it's happening. That's timeless living. No schedule, no destination, only presence. But this garden isn't far away. It's right in the breath you're taking, in the bird song outside the window, in the feel of your hand on the wooden table. Our society fears that garden. We're taught that without plans, goals, a mission, life is meaningless. Try telling your boss you want a day off to watch clouds drift. He'll think you've lost your mind. Try telling friends you don't need a promotion, a bigger house. They'll worry about your future. We're imprisoned in an invisible jail with bars made of promises. Just try a little harder and you'll be happy. But that little harder lasts a lifetime and happiness dangles out of reach. Look at how children play. A 3-year-old can spend hours stacking Lego, not to build the world's tallest tower, but for the joy of each brick clicking. It doesn't think about growing up to be an architect. It has no concept of wasted time. Then we adults step in and teach. Stop playing. Go study so you can succeed later. We strip away their wild garden, replace it with an industrial field, rows upon rows, straight, efficient, but soulless. We adults once had that garden too, but lost it. We replace natural joy with conditional joy. I'll be happy when I have a degree, when I have a partner, when I have a house, when I have kids, when I retire. Each time we achieve, we set a new condition. That's how the ego, hypnotized by time, operates. In Taoist philosophy, Lao Tzu said, "The one who knows enough is rich. Not rich from owning much, but rich from needing nothing more." The Taoist elder's garden is just a thatched hut, a pine tree, a stream. But he sits there, smiling at drifting clouds, feeling he owns the universe. Technology, used rightly, can return the garden to us. Imagine a world where robots plant rice, machines weave cloth, solar power provides free electricity. People don't work to live. They work if they want, or do nothing. A painter paints because colors move him. A musician plays because sounds make him alive. No one asks, how much does your art contribute to GDP? No one measures life's value in work hours. That's not far-fetched utopia. It's possible today if we dare abandon the illusion of earning a living. But to abandon, we must face the greatest fear, that if we don't run, we'll fall into the abyss, that if we don't accumulate, we'll starve, that if we have no goals, we'll be empty. These fears are nurtured from childhood. Study hard for a good job later, save so you don't suffer later, work hard to rest later, all based on the premise that the present isn't enough, that only the future is worthwhile. But what is the future? It's a notion, a ghost. When you reach that future, it's become the present, and you need a new future. In Zen, there's a famous koan. Before enlightenment, I chopped wood, carried water. After enlightenment, I chopped wood, carried water. Nothing changes outside, but everything changes inside. Work is no longer a means to something. It is itself. Chopping wood is chopping wood. Carrying water is carrying water. Watching rain is watching rain. No, so that later. That's timeless living. Every action self-perfect, needing no reason beyond itself. Try a small experiment. For 10 minutes, do nothing. Just sit, breathe, look. No phone, no music, no thinking about to-do lists. At first you'll fidget. The brain will scream, wasting time, do something useful. But if you persist, a magical moment comes, stillness. You realize that without doing, you still exist, still complete. Those 10 minutes aren't lost. They're 10 minutes you truly lived. Our society doesn't teach this experiment. Schools teach math, literature, science, all aimed at later. No one teaches, today, sit still and feel your heartbeat. No one teaches, eat a bite of rice and really taste it. We're trained into efficient machines, but not into humans. The result? We can build rockets to Mars, but can't sit still for a minute without guilt. A friend once told me about his grandfather, a central Vietnamese farmer who only knew plowing fields, planting rice his whole life. No TV, no radio, no concept of retirement. Every evening he sat on the porch, smoked a water pipe, watched the moon, asked, "Do you have any dreams?" He laughed. "What are dreams? I have rice to eat, a place to sleep, the moon to watch. Enough." We laugh at his spiritual poverty. But perhaps we're the poor ones because we don't know enough. Technology can help us return to the garden, but only if we change our view. Instead of using machines to produce more, use them to need less. Instead of building factories for jobs, build parks for people to play. Instead of inventing apps to save time, invent ways for people to enjoy time. That's the real revolution. Not changing the outer world, but the inner. Imagine a morning without an alarm. No bell, no meetings, no urgent messages. You open your eyes, sunlight filters through leaves, and instead of jumping up, you lie there, listening to your own breath. That's not laziness. It's the first time in years you've allowed yourself to be here. Not so that later, not because I must earn a living, just be here. That moment isn't in a 5-year plan, not rated by KPIs, not needing social media posts. It's yours, and only yours. Now, scale that moment to a whole society. A society that no longer uses clocks to measure human value. A society where schools teach kids to watch clouds instead of competing for grades. A society where occupation isn't a business card, but how you choose to express joy. A baker bakes because he loves the smell of rising dough. A storyteller tells because she loves kids' eyes lighting up. No one asks, "What's your salary?" But, does it make you come alive? Sounds fanciful? Actually, we have all the tools to make it real today. Automated agriculture can feed 8 billion with land smaller than a province. Solar, wind, geothermal can provide unlimited power without bills. 3D printers can create homes, clothes, tools in hours. The problem isn't scarcity, but distribution. And distribution is stuck in the money maze. Money is no longer a medium of exchange. It's become the end. We work for money, use money to buy time, then work to make up lost time. The perfect circle of madness. Break the circle with a simple idea. Universal credit tied to real output. Everyone gets enough credit to live comfortably. Not to be rich, but to be free. This credit doesn't accumulate. No interest, no debt. It's created corresponding to actual goods and services society produces. Want bread? Yes. Want a house? Yes. Want to learn painting? Yes. No one has to earn it by selling 8 hours of life daily. Work becomes choice, not obligation. An engineer might spend 3 months on clean energy research, then 6 months fishing. A teacher might teach in winter, wander admiring flowers in summer. No one gets fired for inefficiency. Efficiency is measured by joy, not profit. But for this to happen, we must abandon 2 great illusions. 1, the future is where we'll live. 2, money is the measure of value. The first illusion we've discussed much. The future is the carrot on the stick. When you get there, it's past, and you need a new carrot. The second is subtler. We believe a piece of paper, a screen number, has power to decide who eats, who sleeps, who lives. But money is just collective belief. If the world agrees a seashell is money, it is. If the world agrees universal credit is fair, it will be. The problem isn't technical. It's that we haven't dared to believe. Try a thought experiment. Suppose tomorrow all money vanishes. No dollars, euros, yen. Only goods. Rice, cloth, houses, cars. What do? You barter. I give you a sack of rice. You give me a meter of cloth. I fix your roof. You teach my kid math. We'd quickly realize value lies in actions, not symbols. Money is just simplifying exchange at scale. But when scale distorts reality, when someone starves beside a granary because no money, it's no longer a tool, but chains. Technology can replace those chains with direct exchange. Blockchain, AI, IoT sensors can track real output and distribute credit instantly. No central banks, no governments taxing. Everyone has a digital wallet tied to basic needs. Want more? Create value, not by working hard, but by doing what you love. A good song, a joke, a beautiful garden, all value. AI calculates and distributes. No one richer from hoarding, no one poorer from laziness. Wealth becomes ability to enjoy, not to own. In that world, retirement ceases to exist because no one works waiting to retire. Kids don't learn for jobs, but to understand the world. Elders aren't shoved into nursing homes, but invited to tell stories under trees. Artists don't starve because market doesn't need. Scientists don't beg grants to prove economic benefit. Everyone does because that's how they breathe. And when we no longer run, we'll discover a secret. Time isn't a resource, but space to live. Each moment is a small universe. Watching dew on a leaf isn't entertainment. It's meditation. Hearing music isn't pastime. It's communion with the infinite. Eating a meal isn't fueling. It's a ritual thanking earth and sky. When you live like that, you don't need rest because you've never worked in the old sense. You just are. Finally, return to the wild garden. The butterfly still lands on the flower. Clouds still drift. You sit there, no reason, no purpose. And in that moment, you realize this isn't a break between tasks. This is humanity's real work, presence. All the gradius, all the promises, all the carrots.
There comes a time, you see, when the noise of emotion fades, not because you've found peace, but because you've stopped knowing what to feel. You wake up and realize that nothing exactly hurts, yet nothing exactly moves you either. The music still plays, the sun still rises, but somehow you feel like a spectator in your own life. And that, perhaps, is the most difficult feeling of all, the feeling of nothing. You tell yourself you should be grateful. Things could be worse. You've known pain before, and this isn't pain. But the absence of sadness doesn't feel like joy. It feels like suspension. You are neither drowning nor swimming, simply floating, watching everything drift past without the strength or desire to reach for it. And so you wonder, what is this emptiness? Is it depression? Is it rest? Or is it something else entirely, the mind's quiet rebellion against constant motion? Most people imagine that life should always be vivid, that we should feel deeply, that every moment should sparkle with meaning. But perhaps that expectation itself is what exhausts us. You can't keep the ocean at high tide forever. Every wave must eventually draw back. Maybe this emptiness isn't a failure of feeling, but the space that feeling needs to return home. You see, emotion, like breath, requires rhythm. You inhale joy, you exhale sorrow, and in between, there's a pause, a still point where nothing moves. That pause is where you are now. It isn't punishment. It's simply part of the natural breathing of the soul. The difficulty is that we don't recognize it as such. We've been conditioned to believe that stillness means something's gone wrong. So when you find yourself empty, you panic. You look for reasons, you analyze, you reach for distractions, anything to avoid the quiet. But life, with infinite patience, sits beside you and whispers, "It's all right. You're not broken. You're just resting." What if the emptiness isn't absence, but cleansing? What if it's life-clearing space inside you, space that used to be filled with noise, with striving, with everyone else's expectations of who you should be? You begin to see that what you call emptiness might actually be truth revealing itself, unfiltered by drama or desire. For the first time, you are not rushing toward the next emotion to prove you're alive. You are simply being. And that's an uncomfortable realization, because being, without embellishment, feels raw. You can't hide behind excitement or sadness. You can't even hide behind hope. There's only awareness, open, bare, and silent. But there is a strange beauty to that silence. You start to notice things again, the way a breeze moves through curtains, the sound of distant laughter, the faint hum of your own heartbeat. Nothing dramatic, yet somehow it feels intimate. You're beginning to sense life not as a performance, but as presence. And maybe that's what the emptiness is for, to bring you back to presence, to pull you away from the endless striving to feel something extraordinary, so you can rediscover the ordinary as sacred. Because what you call emptiness might simply be life's way of teaching you how to see without expectation, how to love without condition, how to exist without the constant need for intensity. There's a story I once told about a man who went into the forest looking for enlightenment. For days, he meditated, chanted, and searched, but nothing happened. On the 5th day, exhausted, he gave up. He sat beneath a tree and simply breathed. In that moment of giving up, he noticed the sound of birds for the first time. He noticed the rhythm of his own breath, the feeling of the earth beneath him, and he began to weep, not from sadness, but from seeing how simple life had always been. That's what happens when the emptiness is allowed to be empty. It fills itself with awareness. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to fill the silence with meaning. Just listen. The same life that once made you feel everything is still here. It hasn't abandoned you. It's simply teaching you to hear in a quieter key. Think of a field after harvest. The soil looks bare, but that barrenness is not death. It's rest. It's preparation. Beneath the surface, life is reorganizing itself. What looks like nothing is the beginning of everything. The same is true for your heart. It's not broken. It's simply reorganizing. It's letting go of what it no longer needs to carry. And when you stop demanding that life feel a certain way, you begin to understand something astonishing, that meaning was never something you created. It was something that revealed itself in moments when you weren't trying. The smile of a stranger, the flicker of candlelight, the quiet comfort of existing at all these things become enough again. So when you feel empty, don't rush to fill it. Let the emptiness be what it is. Let it echo. Let it stretch. Because it is in that space that the next chapter of your aliveness is already forming. And if you can bear to sit there, even for a little while, you might realize that what you thought was numbness was actually clarity the moment before feeling returns, the calm before understanding. You don't need to label it. You don't need to cure it. You just need to stay awake long enough to see what it becomes. Because one day soon, without warning, you'll notice something small, a sound, a scent, a fleeting thought, and it will move you again. And when it does, you'll understand that the emptiness wasn't an ending, but a cleansing. You'll laugh, perhaps softly, and say to yourself, it was never gone, it was just quiet. And that quiet, my friend, is the foundation of all joy. And so, after all the searching, after all the noise and striving and breakdowns and beginnings, you come to this quiet space. The world still spins, people still move, things still happen, but for you, something has changed. You are no longer measuring life by its emotional intensity. You are no longer chasing after a feeling to prove that you exist. You are, quite simply, here. And that, though it sounds small, is the greatest arrival of all. When you stop needing to feel something extraordinary, you begin to notice the miracle of the ordinary. The way water glimmers in a glass, the way your breath cools as you exhale, the way stillness itself hums with a presence that can't be described. And it dawns on you that what you called emptiness was never empty at all. It was spacious, vast, quiet, and alive. But we are afraid of quiet things. We're afraid of the in-between, of pauses, of the unspectacular. Because in silence, there's nothing to distract us from ourselves. The mind, used to being occupied, begins to panic. Why am I not feeling? What's wrong? But when you allow the mind to panic and still stay still, you begin to see that the panic itself is only another ripple on the surface. Beneath it, there's something unmoving, something you can't name, but that has been here all along. That something is what you are, the awareness behind the waves, the witness of both joy and sorrow, presence and absence, fullness and emptiness. You begin to understand what the sages meant when they said that the true self is untouched by the changes of the world. It's not that life stops affecting you. It's that you stop mistaking its movements for your identity. When you say, I feel empty, who is it that notices the emptiness? When you say, I'm not sad, who is it that sees the absence of sadness? That one, the quiet observer, is what you've been searching for all your life. You were never meant to fill the emptiness. You were meant to recognize yourself within it. Emptiness, in this way, becomes a mirror. It reflects back not what's missing, but what has always been. It shows you that the peace you thought you had to earn through struggle was already present in the very stillness you were avoiding. There's a certain humility that comes with this realization. You begin to laugh at how hard you tried to fix what was never broken. You see how every emotional storm you once feared eventually passed, and how each one left you a little softer, a little more open. You see how even the emptiness, this quiet space you once called void, is not against you, but for you. It's life's way of giving you back to yourself. And now, when feelings do return, when joy or sorrow comes again, they don't own you. They move through you like weather. You let them come, and you let them go. You no longer demand that life be constant sunlight. You're content to stand in the rain, because you see now that even rain has its own kind of music, its own way of washing things clean. And this is perhaps the strangest truth, that the deepest fullness often hides in what the world calls emptiness. You might notice, too, how different your relationships feel from this place. When you are no longer desperate to feel, you no longer demand that others give you something to complete you. You stop turning love into a transaction. You love people for their being, not for their usefulness to your emotional narrative. You see that they, too, are walking through their own quiet spaces, their own seasons of emptiness. And suddenly, compassion blooms. You no longer need to rescue anyone, nor do you need anyone to rescue you. You simply share presence, and that is love in its purest form. We've been taught that love must burn bright, that it must overwhelm and intoxicate. But the truest love is more like moonlight, steady, cool, and quietly illuminating everything it touches. When you sit beside someone in silence and still feel connected, that is love. When you can walk through emptiness without demanding it to end, that is love. And so, your emptiness becomes your teacher. It teaches you patience, humility, gentleness. It teaches you that nothing needs to be forced, because everything is already unfolding exactly as it must. The great paradox of being human is that we run from what we most need to meet. We try to escape silence, not realizing that silence is where we hear life most clearly. We try to escape boredom, not realizing that boredom is simply the mind's restlessness before it dissolves into peace. You begin to understand that life's invitations rarely come in fireworks. They come in whispers. They come in the pauses between thoughts, in the spaces between heartbeats, in the gentle moments when you stop insisting that things must be different. There's an immense freedom in no longer needing every day to feel significant. You start to see that ordinary moments, washing dishes, walking, breathing, contain the same essence as enlightenment. The same awareness that watches galaxies spin is the awareness that watches your hands move under warm water. And that realization, my friend, changes everything. Because once you truly see it, you can never again believe that your life is meaningless. Meaning is not found in what you achieve or what you feel. It is found in the simple act of being aware. Now, perhaps you wonder, if life is so simple, why does it take so long for us to see it? Why do we have to go through heartbreak, exhaustion, emptiness, before we understand? Because simplicity cannot be taught, it must be rediscovered. The mind is addicted to complexity. It builds elaborate theories about who you are and what you must do. It fills the silence with commentary, with worry, with endless striving. But life, in its quiet wisdom, eventually shows you that none of that noise was ever necessary. So it lets you burn out. It lets you reach the end of your strength, the end of your ambitions, the end of your emotions, until, exhausted, you fall back into stillness. And in that fall, you finally see what was there all along: peace without reason, love without condition, being without need. That's the gentle trick of the universe. It hides itself in the very places you're most afraid to look, in silence, in loss, in emptiness, knowing that when you finally stop running, you will see that it was never gone. And when that realization sinks in, you don't just understand it intellectually, you feel it. You feel that everything is made of the same essence. The sound of the wind, the beating of your heart, the passing of time, all of it woven from the same thread. You realize that emptiness isn't the absence of life, it's the canvas upon which life paints. And from that moment on, you no longer need the highs and lows to feel alive. You can sit in the quiet and smile, because you know that even in stillness, you are surrounded by the miracle of being. There's a kind of maturity that comes with this seeing. Not the seriousness of age, but the softness of understanding. You become less interested in proving anything, less in a hurry to arrive anywhere. You begin to treat your own emotions like weather, beautiful when they come, but never personal. You find yourself saying, "Ah, here is sorrow," or "Ah, here is joy," and watching both with equal tenderness. And this, I think, is the essence of freedom, to be so deeply at peace with change that nothing can truly disturb you anymore. It's not indifference. It's intimacy. You are no longer resisting life. You are touching it directly. Even your emptiness, when it comes again as it will, becomes a kind of friend. You recognize it, welcome it, let it sit beside you. You no longer ask it to leave, because you know it is only life rearranging itself once more. And slowly, the great mystery of all this begins to reveal itself, that what you are looking for has never been elsewhere. The wholeness you seek was never lost. You were simply looking through the eyes of longing rather than the eyes of being. In the end, the journey from sadness to emptiness and from emptiness to peace is not about changing your life, it's about waking up to what has always been true. That even in the moments when you feel nothing, life is still holding you. That even when you feel detached, you are still deeply connected. That even in your quietest hour, you are still the sound of the universe breathing. And maybe, when all is said and done, that is what Alan Watts was trying to tell us all along. That awakening is not about feeling more, it's about needing less. It's the realization that being empty is not the opposite of being full. It's the same thing, seen from the other side. The fullness you've been searching for was never out there. It was always in the quiet, waiting for you to stop searching long enough to hear it. So if you're not sad, just empty, take heart. You are not broken. You are being made spacious enough to hold everything. Because when emptiness and awareness meet, that's what we call awakening.
There's something happening to you right now that you can't quite name. And I need to tell you something about it that might be difficult to hear. This feeling you're carrying, this strange place you're in, it's not a waiting room. It's not preparation. It's not the space before your life begins. It's the most dangerous phase of your entire journey. Dangerous because most people don't survive it. Not physically, but they abandon themselves here. They quit here. They convince themselves the vision was never real. And they do it right before everything was about to change. You clicked on this video not for entertainment, not to pass the time. You clicked because something inside you is looking for confirmation. Confirmation that this feeling, this strange mixture of certainty and confusion, isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. Let me tell you what I think is actually happening. You can see it. The life you're supposed to be living. The person you're supposed to become. It's not a vague dream anymore. It's specific. It's detailed. You can almost touch it. And that's precisely what makes your current reality so unbearable. Because you're standing here, and that future is standing over there, and the distance between the two feels like it might kill you. Some days you wake up and there's this electricity running through you. Everything feels possible. You make decisions from that future place, bold decisions, and for a few hours you inhabit that version of yourself completely. But then something shifts. Maybe by afternoon, maybe by the next morning, and suddenly you're back in the weight of what is. The bank account that doesn't reflect your vision, the people around you who don't see what you see, the evidence, or lack of it, that anything is actually working. And you think there's something wrong with this. You think the oscillation means you're unstable, unfocused, not cut out for this. But I want to tell you something that might change everything. This is the place. This exact experience you're having right now, this is the most important phase of your entire journey. And here's what nobody tells you about it. You will never need to be here again. This is a one-time passage. A threshold you cross once and only once. Which is why most people don't recognize it while they're in it. They think it's a waiting room. They think it's the space before their life begins. It's not. This is where your life is actually being decided. Let me explain what's really happening when you feel like you're living in two realities at once. There's the reality everyone else can see. The one with the struggle, the building, the waiting, the not yet. This is the reality that shows up in your circumstances. The reality you have to explain to people. The reality that makes you feel like you're behind. And then there's the reality you feel. The one where the future version of you isn't imaginary at all. It's more real than what's in front of you. You can feel that person's confidence, their calm, their certainty. You know how they think. You know how they move through the world. And on your best days, you make decisions from that place. But here's the problem with existing in two timelines simultaneously. When that future self feels close, you feel invincible. You take risks. You speak differently. You carry yourself like someone who has already arrived. But when the present self reasserts its weight, when you look around and see only the gap, something in you collapses. You feel like a fraud, like you've been pretending, like the distance between where you are and where you're going is a distance you specifically cannot cross. This whiplash isn't a malfunction. This is what transformation actually feels like from the inside. You see, we have this idea that growth is linear, that you start at point A, you work hard, and you arrive at point B, and the whole journey is a steady upward climb. But that's not how it works. That's not how it's ever worked for anyone who has genuinely transformed their life. The actual pattern looks more like this: a surge forward, then what feels like a collapse, an expansion, then a contraction. A day where you feel like you've finally broken through, followed by a week where you feel like you've lost everything you gained. And in those low moments, in those contractions, you don't just question the path, you question yourself. You wonder if the vision was ever real or just a story you told yourself to avoid facing your limitations. But here's what I need you to understand. The contraction isn't the loss of progress. The contraction is the integration of progress. It's your system catching up to what you've become. It's the space where the growth actually takes root. Think of it like a muscle after intense exercise. There's a period where it feels weaker, not stronger, where it needs rest and recovery. But that period isn't the undoing of the workout. It's where the workout actually becomes part of you. Your psychology works the same way. And if you keep interpreting the contractions as failure, if you keep using those low moments as evidence that you're not meant for this, you will walk away right before the integration completes. This is why most people quit when they do. Not because they weren't close, but because being close feels worse than being far away. Now let me tell you what it actually means to be ready, because you've probably been misunderstanding this your entire life. You think being ready means feeling ready. You think it means having confidence, having clarity, having some kind of stable internal state that doesn't waver. And so you wait. You wait for the doubt to go away. You wait to feel certain. You wait for the fear to stop. But that's not what readiness is. That's not what it's ever been. Readiness is what you do when you don't feel ready. It's the action you take on the morning when everything in you is screaming to stay in bed. It's the work you do when there's no external evidence that the work is leading anywhere. It's choosing the hard right thing over the easy wrong thing when nobody is watching and nobody will ever know. This is what preparation actually looks like. Not motivation, not inspiration. Just the decision to keep going when every feeling you have is telling you to stop. And here's what you need to hear. You've been doing this. You've been showing up on those days. You've been taking action without proof. And you're probably not giving yourself any credit for it because you're too focused on how far you still have to go. But the distance you've already traveled, the internal ground you've already covered, that's not nothing. That's everything. Because most people never start. And of those who start, most people quit during the exact phase you're in right now. You're still here. That's not a small thing. You've been so focused on what you haven't done that you've forgotten to acknowledge what you have. The mornings you got up anyway. The work you did when you didn't want to. The times you chose the vision over the comfort. Nobody saw those moments. Nobody applauded, but they happened. And they're the reason you're still in this. The fatigue you feel, the heaviness, that's not a sign you're failing. It's the weight of becoming. You're carrying two versions of yourself right now. The old one that's dissolving and the new one that's forming. And that's exhausting. Of course it is. But it doesn't mean something is wrong. It means something is happening. But there's a voice, isn't there? A voice that speaks loudest in the quiet moments. When you're trying to fall asleep. When you're alone with your thoughts. When the distraction stops and you're left with yourself. And this voice asks a question that feels like a knife. What if it never happens for you? And you think this voice is your enemy. You think it's the thing you need to defeat before you can succeed. You try to silence it with affirmations. You try to drown it out with motivation. You try to argue with it, to present evidence, to build a case for why it's wrong. But what if that voice isn't trying to stop you? What if it's trying to test you? You see, there's something that happens when a person commits to a path that will genuinely transform them. The commitment gets tested. Not once, but repeatedly. And the tests don't come from outside. They come from within. They come in the form of doubt, exhaustion, the seductive logic of giving up. And every time you feel that voice rising, every time you hear the question, what if this isn't for you? You're not being attacked. You're being asked. You're being asked, do you actually want this? Or do you just like the idea of wanting it? And here's how you answer. Not with words, not with affirmations, not with arguments. You answer by what you do next. If this were just a fantasy, you would have found an easier story by now. You would have negotiated yourself into something more comfortable, something with less resistance, something that didn't require you to keep walking into uncertainty every single day. But you're still here, still asking when, not if. And that tells me something about you that you might not see in yourself. You have faith, not the clean kind, not the comfortable kind. A messy faith. A faith that coexists with doubt, that gets shaky and uncertain, that sometimes feels more like stubbornness than belief. A faith that doesn't feel like faith at all because it's wrapped in so much questioning. But it's faith nonetheless, because you're still in the game. You haven't walked away. And that means somewhere inside you, deeper than the doubt, there's a knowing that won't let you quit. That knowing is the only proof you need. I want you to understand something about the people who have made it to the other side. The ones living the life you're building toward. The ones who turned their vision into reality. They all stood exactly where you're standing. Every single one of them. I spoke with a woman once who built a company that now serves thousands of people. I asked her about the early days, expecting to hear about strategy, vision, the blueprint she followed. She laughed. The early days, she said, were just me crying in my car before client calls, convinced everyone would find out I had no idea what I was doing, and then making the call anyway. That's what the in-between looked like for her. Not confidence, not clarity, just action in the absence of both. They had the same vision and the same gap you have. They had days of electricity and days of collapse. They questioned whether they were the exception to the rule, the one for whom it wouldn't work. They looked at their circumstances and couldn't see how it would happen. They felt the weight, the fatigue, the voice asking, what's the point? And they kept going. Not because they had more confidence than you, not because they had more talent or connections or luck. They kept going because they refused to let the doubt make the decision. The doubt was there. It's always there. It never fully goes away, not even after you've made it. But they acted anyway. They treated the doubt as information, not as instruction. They felt the fear and moved their feet regardless. And that's the only difference. The only difference between the ones who made it and the ones who didn't. The ones who made it let action decide. So I want to offer you something. A different way of measuring where you are. A different way of knowing whether you're on track. Stop measuring your progress by how you feel. I know that sounds strange. We're taught to check in with ourselves, to monitor our emotional state, to use our feelings as a compass. And in many areas of life, that's wise. But in this phase, in the between, your feelings will lie to you. Your feelings will fluctuate based on how much sleep you got, what you ate, what someone said to you, what you saw on your phone, how the weather is, whether you're getting sick. Your feelings will tell you you're failing on the same day you're actually breaking through. Your feelings will tell you to quit 10 minutes before the breakthrough arrives. Feelings are data, but they're not accurate data. Not right now. Not in this phase. So stop asking yourself how you feel about your progress. Start asking different questions. Did you show up today? That's progress. Did you take one action, however small, toward the thing you're building? That's progress. Did you choose not to quit when quitting would have been easier? That's progress. Did you resist the urge to burn it all down and start something new just because the current thing got hard? That's progress. Because this phase isn't measured in breakthroughs. This phase is measured in consistency, in the decision to keep walking when you can't see the path, in the choice to stay in the game when every logical part of your brain is telling you to find an easier game. And by that measure, by the only measure that actually matters right now, you're already succeeding. You just can't see it yet. Here's what I want you to see about where you are. Imagine you're in a forest, dense, unfamiliar, no map, no trail markers, no sense of which direction leads out. And you have only two options, move or stay still. So you pick a direction and start walking. And after a while, you hit a dead end. So you adjust, you try another way. And that's not quite right either. You keep moving, keep adjusting, keep hitting walls and finding new paths. Now, you could interpret this as failure. You could say, I keep choosing wrong, I keep wasting time, I'm not good at navigating. Someone else would have found the way out by now. But that would be a misunderstanding. Because every wrong direction you've taken has taught you something. It's eliminated a possibility. It's sharpened your instincts. It's built your capacity to read the terrain. You're not lost because you're incompetent. You're in a place that can only be crossed by moving through it. There is no map for the in-between. There never was. The people who made it through didn't have better directions. They just kept moving when they couldn't see where they were going. The forest isn't punishing you. The forest is training you, and the training is the point. I want to tell you something that might be difficult to hear, but I think you need to hear it. This phase you're in, this between, this is not preparation for your life. This is your life, and it might be the most alive you'll ever feel. Because right now you have hunger, you have direction, you have something you're building toward, something that matters to you. You have skin in the game. You're not comfortable, and that discomfort is keeping you sharp, keeping you moving, keeping you becoming. And I know you're waiting for the other side, waiting for the moment when you've arrived and you can finally relax into what you've built. But I need to tell you something about that moment. It doesn't end the uncertainty. It just changes the game. The stakes get higher. The problems get different. The doubt doesn't disappear. It just learns new questions to ask. The people who have made it will tell you the same thing. They'll tell you that the hunger you feel now, the aliveness of building something from nothing, that never comes back the same way. Once you've arrived, you can't unarrive. And many of them miss this phase. They miss the rawness of it, the intensity, the feeling that everything was still possible because nothing was yet decided. So if you're waiting to feel successful before you let yourself appreciate this, if you're postponing your experience of the journey until you've reached the destination, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss the part where you were most alive. So here's what I want to leave you with. The fact that you're still here, the fact that you clicked on this video looking for something you couldn't name, the fact that these words are landing somewhere inside you, that's not an accident. Something in you recognized this. Something in you needed to hear that the place you're in isn't a mistake, that the struggle isn't a sign you're on the wrong path, that the doubt doesn't disqualify you. And the only confirmation you need isn't out there somewhere. It's not in a sign or a signal or someone else's approval. It's in here. It's in the fact that you refuse to stop, that you keep getting back up, that no matter how many times the voice asks if it's worth it, you keep answering with your actions. That's not weakness dressed up as strength. That's strength, the only kind that matters. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Not for me, for yourself, say it out loud, or write it where you'll see it, or post it somewhere others can witness it. 3 words, I keep walking. That's it. That's the whole thing. Because in this phase, that's the only declaration